Welcome aboard, Giants fans, to episode 55 of Talk is Cheaper, New York Giants podcast right here on NJ.com. I'm Joe Giglio, joined as always by Jordan Renan, James Scratch. They cover the Giants for NJ Advanced Media. We're back this week talking about OTAs and what they saw there. And Jordan, how are you, man?
Good, Joe. 55, feeling old. We're getting, we're almost like a full year's worth if we did it every week.
You're right. Yeah, we have.
Actually, I'm sorry. We would be over a year's worth. My math was off there.
That's all right. Yeah, and I think we've done it for over a year now, and we're at episode 55. Obviously, we took a couple of weeks off here and there, but we're here with you this week. And before we get into OTAs and what you guys saw, and we'll take some questions from listeners on Twitter. We have to start with a little of what I noticed as I watched you guys cover OTAs. So first, I want to get into the whole Snapchat thing because I noticed both of you guys are on Snapchat. So I want to talk about what you're doing there because I think it's a cool way to follow along with the Giants and with you guys this summer. But first, Jordan, I have to ask you because it became a thing on social media. I saw it. How's the new hair gel?
The hair gel is rock, man. This stuff is glue. I mean, they call it styling spiking glue, but it really is glue. I'm on day 5 without having touched or washed my hair. Obviously, people seem to be amazed, that you could shower without washing your hair. It doesn't seem like such a novel concept to me. I mean, am I way off base here? That it's that ridiculous to shower without it's that hard to believe that I could shower without washing my hair?
I've never really done it, but I don't really have that
never?
hair.
You never? Yeah, I don't have.
I've never showered?
Used hair gel in my life, so.
But I understand it.
You've never showered without washing your hair, though?
I don't think so. But as much as I don't get it from I've never done
it.
It's
bad for your scalp, Joe, to wash your hair every day.
Well, see, this is why you're the guy that we have to go to for these kind of tips. I mean, you're the one that knows. But I'll say I understand it. I've never done it, but I understand it. I mean, if you put that stuff in, you have the hair gel in, and it works. Why would you take it out in a day? I get that.
Well, I mean, usually, this is what's so amazing about this stuff. Usually, you wake up in the morning and your pillow is filled with white flakes, not being dandruff, but being just from the gel. The gel usually comes out. But this stuff, I'm telling you, this stuff just doesn't come out. I mean, I've been outside, I've run around, I've done 3-mile runs, and this stuff is still just hasn't budged. Unbelievable.
So is this the new go-to, especially when you get? I know training camp's always you guys don't have much time between all the work, being outside, trying to get a couple of hours rest here and there. So is this? Did you find something good here, Jordan?
I don't know. My wife hates it. I gotta judge the importance of how important this stuff is actually glue, or whether my wife talks to me. I have to judge the importance. It's like a sliding scale there. You gotta weigh the pros and the cons before you make a final decision.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
Training camp is a time of year where you need to wear a hat. So I don't know. I don't want the last thing we need to have happen is one of those hot days, August, and have Jordan not be able to get his hat off his head because it's some sort of chemical bonding agent or whatever.
Well, James, I do actually visor, so I still do. I still gel it up usually, gel it back a little bit, and then visor it. So.
I go floppy hat.
It's possible I could go both, yeah.
Outside of the Giants' progress.
My wife told me never to wear the flabby hat. I look like an idiot. So
I remember that.
I took her advice on that one.
I think outside the Giants' progress, we're going to have to follow this saga throughout the summer here. All right, so outside of
football, we get the football.
one more thing. This ties into the football. Now, outside of Jordan's hair and hair products, I did notice both you guys, I believe, have started to use Snapchat. Now, I don't have it, but I should download it. But I've been on it before.
We're learning, Joe. We're learning. It's a learning experience for sure.
But I was able to look at a little bit, even though I don't have it myself on my phone, of what you guys were doing. So how is it so far? And more importantly, do Giants fans like what they're getting out of you guys on Snapchat? We'll go to James first because I saw you had it too.
I do have it. I mean, if they like what they're getting, I have no idea because unlike Twitter, and if I'm wrong, people email me, tweet me. It doesn't seem like there's any way to get any feedback. You just kind of put stuff out there into the ether, and I guess people look at it. I don't know.
You can see how many people viewed it, but yeah, I have not discovered any feedback avenue with the actual app. So yeah, I'm with James. The way I view it, and I've been thinking about it, and I've been trying a couple different things. And I know people want us to just Snapchat all these plays. That's just not realistic and not a good idea for us in our job. Like if Odell Beckham makes a ridiculous catch, we don't want it to go viral on Snapchat and not put it up on our website and get it to people that way. So to me, the most valuable thing is you could kind of see. I could give you an inside look of what it's like to be a beat writer, where we're going, what we're doing, and give you little sneak peeks of what's going on with the Giants that maybe I wouldn't be able to provide you on other platforms. So I think for me, that's what I'm seeing is going to be the most useful way to use Snapchat going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it seems like a cool way. I know a lot of different beat writers are doing it for different sports in different ways. So I think everyone is looking forward to seeing some more of that from you guys as we get into the summer. All right, so let's get into
real quick, Joe. People like the behind the scenes type thing, so I think that's kind of a good way to like show it to them in real short snippets. Because these teams don't want you videotaping everything, So at least if it's in a little snippet, I think you're all right.
Right, and that's right. People like the behind the scenes stuff. That's why we started the podcast with the hair glue and Snapchat, because that's behind the scenes of this podcast. All right, let's
in-depth inside baseball.
Right, inside talk is cheap right here.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap. All right, so OTAs have gone down. You guys were there. You wrote a lot about it. So let's kind of just talk about what you saw and really what came out of this. And let's start with who impressed you, because I think that's what everyone always wonders. A full off season, new players come in, other players leave. And, it could be a guy that you saw all of last year and maybe they've improved, or it could be someone brand new. So we'll start with Jordan, go to James. Who caught your eye? Who impressed in OTAs?
Well, two guys that stood out to me, and I've talked about this so far, were Darian Thompson. Looks like a guy. Let me preface this all by saying OTAs, mini camps, they're essentially passing camps. They're running around in shorts and a helmet, and there's really minimal contact. There's no real hitting. The linemen, I eliminate lineman evaluations altogether because I don't understand how you could possibly realistically evaluate a lineman without hitting in pads at all. So, yeah, you're talking about whether a guy's in shape or not. Fine, you can do that. So, to me, the two guys that stood out to me, they'll go one on each side of the ball. Darian Thompson, rookie safety, third-round pick, looks like he's has the free safety skills, the kind of playmaker that you'd like. That's exactly what the Giants thought they were getting. A guy who I believe it was 19 interceptions. Is that right, James? Do you know?
Something like that. May have been
the Mountain West Conference record. I think it was either 19 or 17. He beat Eric Weddle's record. So you saw some of that. You saw why that wasn't just a accident that those kind of things happened. He was around the ball making plays here in the OTAs that we saw. Granted, we saw 3 of what will be 10 OTA practices, so it's only a little snippet again. And on the offensive side of the ball, Matt Lacoste every day, catching passes, left and right, working with the first team plenty. Clearly, he's in that, at least in my opinion, he's in that mix for, okay, he's going to have a legitimate chance to start here if he has a good summer, especially if he could prove that he's the best blocker of the bunch, which I think has a good chance to be true.
That's fascinating because I remember last year his name came up a little bit early on, and now we're back to
injured. Got injured.
Right.
Injured in training camp, and it kind of derailed him. He actually they couldn't come back to the Giants. I believe it's the week after week 8 after they got an injury settlement with him.
Yeah, I feel like it was OTAs. I mean, I can almost feel like it was a year ago. Around this time, we had a very similar conversation about him and about his potential role with the Giants. All right, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on moving forward. James, how about you? For you, who impressed and who kind of caught your eye in OTAs?
One of the guys who's caught my eyes is Darian Thompson's college teammate, Dante Dion. You look at the roster, he's listed as 5'9", 158 pounds. So not a very big guy. But he had an interception the other day off Ryan Nassib, a air quotes pick 6 in a practice setting. He had a nice play on the ball. The second OTA we were at, he's a guy who I think a lot of fans are kind of intrigued by and are rooting for, kind of an underdog role. And I think there's going to be a spot. Obviously you have DRC and Apple and Trevin Wade and Janoris Jenkins, but probably going to carry 5 or 6 quarterbacks. So he's a guy who has a chance to maybe come out of nowhere, sort of, and make the team. And on offense,
reminds me a lot of Charles James before you switch over to offense,
Yeah.
James. You weren't really here for Charles James, but boisterous, loud, guy who was just a playmaker type cornerback. He didn't, he stuck around for a little bit with the Giants, but then he sort of moved on. But he's proven that he could play a little bit in this league. So the Giants would be happy if they could get that out of Dion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's, as I said, the size, you kind of scratch your head about the size, but, who knows, maybe he can keep making plays. And on offense, a lot of the receivers have impressed me. Obviously, I wrote about Jeremy Davis. He's had some moments as he tries to have a big second year. And some of the undrafted guys, Darius Powell, Roger Lewis, who Jordan wrote about, KJ May even. So I think it's going to be a really intriguing summer in terms of the bottom half of the receiving core, because there's a lot of guys there who have some ability, but they're only probably, you figure, going to take 1 or 2, assuming that Cruz is healthy, Beckham, Dwayne Harris, and Sterling Shepard all are locks to make the roster.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Shepard in that group, but it's pretty clear he could play. I mean, he was making plays all over the field, so you got to be happy with what you've seen from some of those draft picks early.
The one guy, you didn't mention there, at least I don't think you did, with the rookies, and you mentioned Shepard, who we know is probably going to have a big impact, and Jordan, you mentioned Darian Thompson. How about Eli Apple? Everyone's always very interested when it's a first-round pick. It's weird, I guess, with the Giants this year because there's that expectation out there that the second-round pick and maybe even the third-rounder will have more of an impact this year just because of the way the roster's set up, and Eli Apple's future maybe won't be right now, maybe not in the present in terms of having a big role in the Giants. But what did you see out of him, and where is he lining up right now?
Granted, we only saw, as I got to keep repeating, we only saw 3 of those OTAs, 3 of the 10. But I didn't really see Eli Apple in the slot very often. Seems to be still learning the outside. What they were doing the last couple times we were there was Apple was rotating in sort of a 3-man rotation on the outside with Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. Jenkins looked like he was in there most of the time. But, he was sort of like, okay, here's the third outside corner for right now. And I guess if you think about it, the Giants are likely going to need, another cornerback on the outside. But the slot is a position, of definite concern. So you wonder. But Trevin Wade was the guy that I saw in there almost all the time with the first team. So with Eli Apple, it wasn't terrible. You didn't see anything that stood out that he was getting picked on, and you didn't see anything spectacular. So I think on a scale of what you're expecting from a rookie cornerback, that's pretty good, especially when you're talking about a passing camp where there's really minimal contact. It's not like receivers are allowed to get hit. So the fact that he wasn't abused is a good thing. The fact that you didn't hear his name called very often is probably a positive. So fairly positive reviews from me for Eli Apple.
Let's go to JPP because I think that every fan, I know, Jordan, you said to start this, that with the linemen, it's very hard in these to evaluate. So, this isn't full contact. We understand that. Everyone listening understands that, JPP can only show you so much. Any defensive lineman or offensive lineman can only show you, whatever they can. But just in terms of the way he looked, the kind of shape he was in, and the spirits he's in. We're in almost a full year removed now from what happened to him last summer. And obviously the Giants are hoping that he's going to be more of himself than he could be last year. James, what did you think of JPP and your thoughts on him, now after all of last year?
He looks to be in very good shape. I think, he spoke to us on Monday, the last OTA we had. He is very obviously ready to basically just put all this in his past and move forward. But I think one of the issues is that until we get to the regular season and we get to contact and we see him play with the hand and the special glove after the offseason surgery, we really can't put the story to rest because no one really knows what he's going to be. He had flashes last season and he had clear limitations with the club. Now the club's off. Now his hand is, for want of a better term, it's a finished product in terms of what it's going to be in terms of the surgery and everything. So it's kind of, for me, a big wait-and-see game. And I think it's one of the major questions facing this team is what kind of player is Jason Pierre-Paul? Is he basically going to be the same guy we saw last year? Is he going to be better? Is he not going to be as effective? So, I mean, it's just a broad range, I think, of what we're going to get from him this season. And I know everybody wants to forget about the hand issue and kind of move forward from it, but until we actually have contact, it's still going to be something we have to talk about.
Yeah, we have to see how much he's actually able to use the hand. Look, the realistic view on JPP is that he's never going to be the same player as he was before. I mean, he has however many fingers you want to say on that hand. That's not a fully functionable right hand of what it was before. So, he's working with 3 fingers, whatever. Or, I'd say only 2 are probably fully functional as they were before. So,
yeah,
so you're talking about a guy who's going to have to work around the limitations and learn how to play around those and do the best that he can with what he has. And he can still be a pretty good player. But I think to expect JPP to be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro, a 16.5 sack guy like he was in 2011 is awfully unrealistic. So you got to set the bar at a realistic point, I think, when you're talking about JPP.
I think that's fair and right. And he used to, I mean, obviously his career has set the bar very high in the past, and now we set it a little bit lower. Now, we started this conversation a few minutes ago by talking about Matt LaCosse. Jordan, you brought him up, and you said you wouldn't be surprised if he plays his way into the mix there, with the tight ends and right near the top of the depth chart. How about the bar there for Giants tight ends and what he has to reach? Like, what does he have to do to really get in that mix? Is it just play the way you saw him at OTAs, stay healthy, and you think he'll have a shot at it? How realistic is it that, 2 months from now, we're going to be doing a podcast and really talking about him right near the top of the depth chart for the Giants at tight end?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen in this camp or this spring that he can catch the ball and get open and moves pretty well for a pretty big guy. When you're talking about starting tight end, Daniel Felds actually was starting a bunch earlier last year because he was the better blocker. So if Matt LaCosse can prove that he's the better blocker than Will Tye and Larry Donnell, who, by the way, aren't very good blockers in the first place, then there's a very good chance that he starts as long as even if he just proves to be an average pass catcher this summer. So the blocking part, I think, is the key, and that's what we need to see from LaCosse going forward. And we got to see that from Will Tye and Larry Donnell, too. I mean, can they block? Maybe Will Tye got significantly better at blocking. Obviously, we've talked about this before. We can't judge linemen, and we can't judge tight ends either when it comes to blocking because they're really just working on technique stuff now.
Yeah, and it's done a hell of a...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's done a hell of a job blocking the bag that the other guy is holding, but beyond that.
It's more of like a matter of being in the right place at the right time at this time and just showing, okay, I got to the right spot, I picked up the right guy, not, okay, now the second part of it is, okay, now first you were in the right place, now you have to prove that you could withstand the contact and actually do a successful block against your opponent. So that part of it's still unknown, we'll find out. But I think LaCosse, what he told me when I spoke to him was that he thought he did a pretty good job blocking last year in the 2 games that he played, and that's sort of what one of the things the Giants relayed to him. So that is a positive for him for sure.
James, what are your thoughts on LaCosse and really what he could do here? I mean, do you agree? Do you think he could work his way into the mix as we get into the summer?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Jordan's right. They need a blocking presence. Donnell and Tye did not block very well last year. LaCosse is a guy who the Giants liked his blocking last year, and he's a guy who's really focused on in the offseason. Jarrell Adams, the 6th-round pick, I really think that he's one of those guys that he might not play any really offensive snaps this year. He seems like he's, like as they said, kind of a development player. For me, I think a key with the tight ends is, does Ben McAdoo's secret weapon, Will Johnson, does he stay working with the tight ends as he is right now? Or does he eventually transition to fullback? I think that's one of the big keys because he's also a guy who's a proven blocker and could maybe make it so, give LaCosse a run for that blocking lane in the offense at tight end.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's definitely in that mix.
All right. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say he's working with the tight ends right now, but no one wants to actually articulate what the vision for Will Johnson is, except that they have a vision.
He's also been doing works with as a fullback as well, so like fullback H-back. So it's really a multifaceted role. The question is, how much are they going to want to use him at tight end, or are they just testing right now to see if he could fill that role?
Yeah,
which probably is the case. That's what the spring's for.
Right, it's what this time of year is for, and I don't think any conversation about any Giants practice or organized team activity or anything would be complete if we didn't hit on areas of the team that people are always worried about, the fans are always worried about. And let's, obviously, because the offensive line we talked about, you can't evaluate now. Let's leave that aside. So let's throw two out there, and have your thoughts changed at all? Do you feel better, worse? Let's go to linebacker. I think, James, you had the piece last week about the Giants linebacker room, and it's always a conversation that fans want to have because I think part of it just harkens back to the good old days when the Giants were great for a good period of time in the 80s. They had great linebackers. They don't anymore. But this group, it's its own group, right? A new middle linebacker in there. Thoughts on the linebacker group that you saw them on the field together, and do you feel better about them, the same? Have your thoughts changed from, kind of when it all came together throughout the offseason?
I think that it's a very veteran group. It's with the exception of the rookie, B.J. Goodson. Is a bunch of guys
who also impressed, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
seems pretty athletic for a thumper.
So it's a group that has experience. It's proven. Like last year, a guy like Wanyunga was kind of starting on opening day with as no NFL experience. That sort of situation is not going to happen this year. They seem like they're going to have either Goodson or someone with 5, 6, 7 years of experience at every position. But, they got to stay healthy. I think Keenan Robinson is really a major key. If he can stay healthy and either beat out Jasper Brinkley for the job in the middle or maybe win the weak side job, him and Devon Kennard staying healthy, I think they got a chance to be much improved at linebacker. But if those guys have health issues, then you start to get to the point where there's not a lot of depth, and some of the guys you have on the field didn't have the best experiences when they were on the field last year. So tentatively, I think it's an improved group on paper, but everybody's got to stay healthy, and then they've got to translate the optimism they have now to once we get to training camp and then into the season.
I will say this about the linebacker position. What concerns me is there is definitely, like you said, a lot of guys. There's some veterans. There's a lot of guys that are NFL players that can play. I'm still concerned. I need a linebacker that can play every down, that can be out there, be your middle linebacker, and be able to stay out there on passing downs as well. I need one of those guys to sort of step up and be the guy at middle linebacker for me not to be concerned. And you see them, working in sub packages. And none of those middle linebackers are 3-down guys as of now. So that concerns me still. I'm still worried about middle linebacker and the linebacker position.
What about the safety position, specifically free safety? Jordan, you mentioned Darian Thompson impressed you before. I'm imagining this is still going to be a summer-long competition, and it's going to be one that we probably talk about all the way up through when they set the final depth chart, I guess. But do you, after seeing Darian Thompson impress, I know it's early, but do you feel better about the group in general, Jordan?
Well, the way I look at it, and I said this in a video the other day, I think right now you're probably going to have 4 better options for that position. At least right now you do. Obviously, last year they had some options too, but they all got injured. But you have 4 better options right now than would starter for you week 1 as sort of a deep cover free safety when Brandon Merriweather was starting, because you got Darian Thompson and then you got the 3 injured guys from last year: Bennett Jackson, Nat Burhay, Michael Thompson or Michael Thompson. I'm not really sure. James, do we have a consensus on how his name is supposed to be pronounced?
Michael Thompson.
Michael?
Yes.
All right. Michael. So the way I view it, they have 3 guys that are better options than last year. 4 guys, sorry. So to me, they're in much better shape there. I think that they can get by there. Those are mostly, Nat Burhay is the one who may be more of an in-the-box player, but the other 3 guys are supposed to be cover guys. I think one of them you'll definitely be able to get enough out of them to be improved at that position.
James, your thoughts on the safeties? Similar type of feeling right now with the free safety position, which is it's been a problem for the Giants for some time now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jordan's right. They have some young guys there that they feel good about. Darian Thompson's off to a very good start to his career and what we've seen in OTAs, but they have to, one, get someone through healthy, hopefully all of them through healthy, and then two, someone's got to get out there and produce. I think you could potentially see sort of them use multiple guys and kind of mix and match on situations, but I think the Giants should feel pretty good about where they stand, all things considered, because when they didn't get a veteran in free agency, I think there was a major cause for concern, but they seem to have their faith has seemed to pay off, and the decision to draft Thompson is looking good so far. So I think that they can be cautiously optimistic, but they got to prove it on the field. And until they do, it's always going to be a concern.
All right, guys, we have to talk about the quarterbacks. And I know, Jordan, you wrote about Nassib over the week. I think it was over the weekend or late last week. And interesting. I mean, he's been with the team now for years. He's been Eli's backup, and I always still wonder what they have in him. Hopefully, and then the Giants said this when they drafted him, they don't have to find out because Eli just keeps playing and playing well. But how about the quarterbacks? Now, Ben McAdoo moving on from head coach and moving on from offensive coordinator to head coach. Still the same system, obviously. It's his offense. But how do the quarterbacks look? We know about Eli, but how about Nassib in particular, what you wrote about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fairly impressed. I mean, look, when James, you weren't here at the time, but 2 years ago, it was my first full season on the team, so my first training camp. They were a disaster at this time. Granted, they were installing the offense, but it was a mess. I mean, it was 2, 3, 4 interceptions seemingly every day between the two of them, and they just, they just go about their business, ho-hum. You don't even notice the quarterbacks most of the time. Sure, this is football, so there's an interception here or there once in a while. I think Eli and Nassib each threw one the other day. We've talked plenty about Darian Thompson getting one and Dion getting one also. So, yeah, but in general, they look pretty good. I mean, Nassib, the difference that I see is that he seems to be a little bit more accurate. And that's a key because that's when I saw him the first year, even probably points of last year, I was never really sure. I mean, I don't know if he could still be a real difference-making starter in the league. I'm not. I still have my doubts that is his end game. But I think from what I've seen is it doesn't appear to be something that pops out at you anymore as a huge weak point. You don't see him throwing the ball over receivers' heads regularly. You see him making quicker decisions, which I think is more a product of knowing the system and knowing what to expect. But the accuracy is the one thing that really sticks out to me as improved. And the reason why I think he'll at some point receive an opportunity to start in this league to see what exactly they have. Like he might be, a guy who's a starter, but a Ryan Fitzpatrick bottom end starter or I don't know who else is in that kind of range kind of guy. A Josh McCown kind of guy, like a fringe guy who's good enough to fill in for a little bit or be a stopgap starter for a year or two. But, that's an upgrade from what I probably thought 2 years ago.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, I'm with you, Jordan. I didn't think that much of him then. I mean, you saw him more, but just in general from what I knew about him. But, yeah, if he becomes that, that's valuable. I mean, every team, the Giants are lucky, but for the most part, most teams usually need to use a backup quarterback here or there. And so for Nassib and for the Giants thing.
You can make a good living. You can make a good living that way, I mean, so there's a lot of money in that. Look at Ryan Fitzpatrick's looking for right now.
He's definitely a guy who I would be very surprised if after this season someone doesn't sign him. And even if it's a situation where it's a team like the Cleveland Browns, or let's say RG3 doesn't play very well this year, and they say, okay, we're going to bring Ryan Nassib in, and we're going to draft a quarterback, and we like Cody Kessler, and we're just going to have everybody compete in training camp. I mean, I definitely think that's kind of the worst case scenario for Nassib, is that he gets to go into some team that doesn't have a quarterback and get to compete for it. Or he goes to a place like New Orleans maybe, and they say, well, we'll give him a shot if we don't think Drew Brees is going to be around here much longer. So I definitely think he'll get the opportunity to try to win a starting job someplace. But I agree with Jordan. I don't look at him and say, that guy's going to take a team to the playoffs in 2 years.
The question really is, what's his value? I mean, that's the interesting question. What's his value? I know people say to him, well, would the Giants look to trade him? Well, two things right now. One, the Giants don't really have another option as their backup quarterback. And number two is Ryan Nassib doesn't really have value to another team because he's going to be a free agent.
And he's thrown 10 passes in his career.
Yeah, the fact that he's thrown 10 passes doesn't have a proven track record. And if a team wants him, can get him next year as a free agent, why are they going to trade something for him now? Like people, can you trade Ryan Nassib for a third rounder? No, I don't think anyone's going to trade for a third rounder for Ryan Nassib unless they have a quarterback injury and they become really desperate. So it would have to be. And then what do the Giants do? Who's their backup quarterback?
I was going to say, I think the Ryan Nassib trade concept train left the station when, if they had, not to go back to last season, but if they had let Nassib play the second half of that last game against the Eagles and he'd gone out and thrown 3 touchdown passes, then, so maybe not, it'd be like a Matt Flynn situation, although not a free agent, as a tradable asset, where someone says, I'll take him because there's not any quarterbacks in this league when you get down to the bottom. But he hasn't really done much. No one's going to trade for a guy on preseason games. So,
well, James, let's be honest. Tom Coughlin did the Giants and Ryan Nassib a disservice.
Yes.
They had – how many meaningless games have they had over the last 3 years?
Oh, I mean,
they did not play a meaningful December game in 2013 or 14. Not a single game. And last year they had a couple, 2 games, Minnesota and Philadelphia, which meant pretty much absolutely nothing. And Ryan Nassib did not get significant playing time at all until Eli Manning broke his ankle in the pouring rain against Washington Week 17 of 2014. So
and Eli was horrible against the Vikings last year.
First of all, there's no reason to have Eli Manning playing the full Week 17. Nassib should at least got a half of that game last year. Probably the same late in the season in 14. Fine, 13, he's still a young guy. That's fine. But 14 and 15, there's no reason for the Giants not to take a look. First of all, for the Giants' future to see what you have. And then for Nassib personally, it would have been good to see, could have helped him out if he played well in a game or two late in the season. There's been guys before that have shown just a little bit of flashes. You talk about Matt Schaub is the guy that kind of pops into my head. So I don't think Tom Coughlin really – it was very short-sighted. There was no reason for Eli Manning to play in some of those games, especially in the second half.
I thought everything about last year, from the Eagles firing Chip Kelly during the week, so it was like they were at a new coach and almost a new offense on the fly, to the feeling in the building. Everything about that game, to me, felt like a preseason game, except no one told Tom Coughlin.
Tom was determined to go out on his own terms that day, which this is right, but I think Jordan's right. I think he did him a disservice. If you play Nassib in the second half, 1, he might catch fire and you might win the game, and 2, you have a chance to maybe get someone interested in him after what they saw in an actual NFL. Not a tremendously competitive NFL game, but not a preseason game.
All right, guys, let's jump to Twitter. A couple questions here, and then we'll wrap up episode 55. All right, Play Me in the NHL wants to know, assuming Cruz is healthy, who will the wide receivers be when it comes down to Davis, Lewis, and Miles White? Jordan, and then we'll go to James.
Let's see. So we have Shepard, Cruz, Odell Beckham, and Dwayne Harris, huh?
They're in.
So we're getting 2 more. Geez. Yeah, I think Jeremy Davis has the edge to me. Roger Lewis is a guy who, unless he blows up, would be a good practice squad kind of guy. So I think maybe both those guys would hang on to it. They like Miles White. He shows an ability to get open. He's a Green Bay guy. I think McAdoo knew him from there, or at least maybe he didn't know him from there, but he came from there. He has that pedigree, knows the system, seems to be able to get open. But Roger Lewis is a guy who played in an offense that was very simple, who probably needs some time to grow. So maybe he would be a practice squad guy. So I'd say the veterans at this point have a significant advantage.
Yeah, I'll
veterans
agree with
being Davis, by the way, who's in his second year.
Yeah. I'll echo what Jordan said. I think that there's a lot of intriguing receivers, undrafted guys, but they might reach a real bottleneck because you have those. If Cruz is healthy, you have those 4 guys who are going to make the team. Davis is a draft pick that they like. They like Miles White. Lewis is a guy with talent, but as Jordan said, he might be a developmental guy like Darius Poe's there.
And is he a special teams guy? Which of these guys can be special teams guys? I think is huge, and that's where Jeremy Davis might have an edge over them.
One quick thing I'll throw in about the wide receivers because we get asked about this pretty much every day. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot out of Anthony Doble yet. He's the French wide receiver. He's very raw. Jordan, I think you'll agree with me on this.
Definitely. Best case scenario is practice squad in mind.
But one thing I will throw out there. I was looking at the collective bargaining agreement. It is my understanding that teams are allowed to have an extra practice squatter. So last year there were 10 guys allowed on the practice squad, and the Giants could have 11 if Doble is designated as an international player. And from what I understand, if you're designated as an international practice squatter, the team has you for a year under that designation, and you're not allowed to be signed to a 53-man roster by any other team in the league. So I do think that
to keep Doble in Giants blue.
Yes. So I do think that I think it's very likely that Doble will make it to the final round of cuts before the 53-man roster. And assuming he doesn't blow up in the preseason, I think the Giants will be able to waive him at that point, get him through waivers, and potentially stash him away on the practice squad for a year and try to develop him. So I don't think he'll be on the roster this year, but I also don't think that the Anthony Doble experiment is going to end after this training camp.
Well, unless he just can't play at all.
Yeah, unless that. But
which, I mean, let's not be completely naive, is a possibility.
Yes. But all things being equal, my guess is that they're probably trying to aim to get him that designation and to kind of stash him away for a year and see what they have.
All right, let's wrap up with this one from PJ. And I think this one's kind of an open-ended one, probably different for each player, but interested to see what you guys think. He wants to know, does success for a player in OTAs really mean anything? Is there usually a carryover to training camp? It's probably, person by person and individual by individual, but what do you think about that? Could that help? Could we see a carryover with some of these guys that did impress you? Jordan?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm trying to think who stood out at OTAs last year. I think a guy that has stood out in the past had been Charles James, and the Giants weren't exactly, all over Charles James, but he ended up being a decent player. So hold on, I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see. Who has impressed? I have on the list Cooper Taylor from last year, Ruben Randall, and Orleans Darkwa. So, hit or miss. Some guys, yes. I mean, Orleans Darkwa, turned out to be much better than people expected. He was a nobody at that point. Randall, that's a little different because he ended up having a knee problem late in camp, and that kind of set him back. So it kind of ruined his season. And Taylor obviously has never been able to stay healthy as well. So it's hard to really judge. But yeah, Orleans Darkwa was a guy. So I think it can carry over. You could tell especially when it comes to undrafted rookies. I think some guys just seem to. You could tell right away. It doesn't mean it's not an end-all be-all with guys, with any rookies, that if they've come in right away. But sometimes you could just see guys right away are NFL players. I just feel that way with Sterling Shepard. I look at him and I'm like, that guy's going to be a good NFL player. He can go up, make catches. He just looks like he belongs. So Darian Thompson looks pretty good too. I wouldn't go as far with him because he has a more physical part of the job that's still to be determined. Got to play the run. So, not sure about that one, but for Sterling Shepard, I feel pretty confident saying he just fit. You could just tell right away that this guy's going to be a solid NFL player at least.
I think a guy like Sterling Shepard, Jordan's right. He's going to be a really good NFL player, so he's going to impress no matter what the situation is. But I definitely think he can. I mean, I guess it can carry over in a sense. I was talking to a player the other day who said that his goal was just to kind of stack good days on top of good days in OTAs. And he said, like, look, it's just OTAs. Nothing is really going to happen here. So, it's not really football activity, but I think guys can have positive developments in OTAs, and that can carry over. But they're just running around in their underwear, as Ben McAdoo once said.
I'm looking at the 2014 version of some OTAs. My buddy Connor Orr did some of these. It's so guys that stood out: Will Hill, Chris Snee coming off injury at the time. So those are some of the things. Nat Burhay had a nice practice. Adrian Robinson did as well. So yeah, there's obviously some hit and some big misses here. So it really, I think, depends on the individual, and you can't make a sweeping observation on whether a guy plays well at OTAs that it's going to mean that it's going to carry over to the summer and the season.
Right. It's just something to keep an eye on. So we will do that, and we'll continue to do it as we move forward into the summer, and obviously when we do get to training camp late July, early August. Guys, this was another fun one. We'll get together soon and talk some more Giants football. Jordan, as always, thanks for doing this, and good luck with all the hair products and the Snapchat.
I will give you a little, scoop here at the end. The hair experiment, it will end tomorrow. It will end after 5 days because I have to go to my daughter's preschool graduation and actually have to, probably dress up a little bit. Right now I'm in shorts and the tank top. So the hair will get washed tonight, and maybe we will reconvene this experiment at a further date, although I don't think anybody that hangs out with me regularly wants me to do that.
And we'll come back and we'll get a full report on this. James, as always, thanks for doing this, and we'll keep following along with Snapchats.
You got it, Joe. Thank you. And people, if you think anything about it, just tell me, because I have no idea how to see what you say on Snapchat.
You're under 30, James. You're under 30. You shouldn't be like that yet. Come on. You're young.
This is true.
Yeah, James, you start aging yourself. Pretend you're older, so it's funnier that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone, for listening to episode 55 of Talk is Cheap. We'll be back soon with another episode. Be sure to follow us on iTunes, on Stitcher, SoundCloud. Anywhere you want to listen, you can listen to Talk is Cheap. And leave us a rating on iTunes. It helps the show grow and helps us bring more episodes and content to you guys during the season. Thanks for listening.
Preferably 5s.
All 5s.
5.